Hare Krishna. Om Jnanativedandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshulanmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him. So there's a very beautiful quote I found recently. I read it before, but I thought I would share it with all of you tonight. It's a short quote, so if you don't pay close attention, you might miss it. So this is the quote. I guess someone's talking on the phone, talking on their cell phone. Who remembers when cell phones didn't exist? Oh yeah, all right. There was a time. Okay, here's the quote. Life's desires should never be directed toward sense gratification. One should desire only a healthy life or self-preservation. Since a human body is meant for inquiry about the absolute truth, nothing else should be the goal of one's work. Vaishnava, do you think you could go outside and just oh, okay. All right. It's like because the thing is when we're having like a spiritual discussion, the idea is it's supposed to be like a meditation, and generally meditation, requires some aspect of quietness. Actually, that's the best. The best place to meditate is the most quiet place. Just like in previous times, people to meditate, to chant Hare Krishna, there's actually some people, what they would do, it's kind of interesting, but they would dig a tunnel in the earth, a deep tunnel, and then they would go into that tunnel, and then they would chant Hare Krishna, which is quite interesting because they would do this in Vrindavan, India. In Vrindavan, India at the time, it was super not populated. Right now, it's very populated. Right now, it's not populated. Right now it's very populated. It's like a metropolitan, or what do you call it? Anyways, a side city of Delhi or something. Anyways, those of you who know the geography of India. But back then, we're talking about 500 years ago. So it was quiet. There were no cars. There were no motorcycles. Can you imagine being in a place like that? No cars, no motor. It was just country. It was country. But still, even though it was so quiet, this person, he dug a hole dug a tunnel in the earth, and he would still chant in there despite that. It was quite interesting. So we might need to in a tunnel, maybe. That'd be difficult. Oh, there you go. Welcome. That was staged. Next time we're going to have someone come through the roof. Yes. Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure. I might read it 3 times. But, okay, so life's desires, means the desires we have in life, should never be directed toward sense gratification. Now, sense gratification means, okay, we have senses, like we have a body, and the body has senses, eyes, nose, tongue, ears, etc. So, those senses, the senses have urges, and fulfilling those urges, you could say, is engaging the senses in gratification. So that's what it means. So life's desires should never be directed towards sense gratification, which we'll elaborate a little further, because actually some sense gratification is actually needed, but we could discuss it a little. But then it's saying what one should desire only a healthy life of self-preservation, since the human body is meant for inquiry about the absolute truth. So the human body is designed to actually inquire into the absolute truth. Nothing else should be the aim of or the goal of one's work. So that's the quote. So recently, or just yesterday, I was walking with one fellow monk, Soul. He's in the kitchen right now, cooking, probably finishing things up. I think he's listening also to the talk, but we met a number of interesting people on the boardwalk. It was around when the sun was setting. So we met some people who've been to the Krishna Lounge before, and we met one girl. She'd been to the Krishna Lounge a number of times. She was with some other friends. Her name's Elena, and parents are from, anyways. But so one of the girls, she was wearing a shirt, and it said "obsessed." That's all it said. So I was going to ask her, anyways. I was going to ask her what she's obsessed with, but I didn't do that. Yeah, obsessed with the shirt. Yeah. Krishna, yeah. So I was thinking about that, and actually, it's the nature of humans to become addicted to something or someone. People enter romantic relationships. People enter and they become addicted to one another and to their company. Of course, that could be quite ugly. Perspective of a monk, right? Of course, it could be quite, anyways. But we have a tendency to become addicted. That's that we see, and this is all based on desires. In other words, as living entities, we're all hungry for something. And it is those desires that move us in a particular direction. But it's interesting because despite everyone that we know, including ourselves, having so many desires for so many things and becoming addicted to so many things and craving so many things, and therefore chasing so many things, it's interesting because if we do some self-reflection, we could ask ourselves when no one's around. We could ask ourselves, okay, have I reached the pinnacle or the perfection of self-satisfaction? Am I fully satisfied? We could ask ourselves that. Now, of course, under illusion, sometimes even somebody in a very deplorable state, for example, they're I mean, it's unfortunate, but they're alcoholics and they've lost everything, including their family and their friends, and they gamble away all their money. And still, under illusion, they may think they're happy. That's another thing. But for a person who still has some wits about them, they could honestly ask themselves, have I reached the pinnacle? Have I reached the perfection of satisfaction? Am I fully satisfied? Or is there some lacking in me? Am I lacking something? So it's an interesting question, and we could all ask ourselves that if you want. It's a free world. You can do whatever you want. But I think it's a good question to ask ourselves. And generally, a lot of times people will say, no, I haven't reached the pinnacle of satisfaction. I'm working on it though. Just haven't reached it yet. Let me finish my PhD. Let me get a good job. But it's interesting because you ask such people that also, they could also ask themselves that. Okay, they've reached all the external goals. They've got their PhD, they got their well-paying job. They may be in a very fine relationship, romantic relationship. They may have a very, beautiful house or whatever. But even if you ask those people, have you reached the pinnacle of satisfaction? And of course, back to the delusion aspect, but if somebody was honestly answer the question, a lot of people have not, unfortunately. So what does this say? It says that we're trying, what does this mean? It means that we're trying to, it means that people are trying to satisfy themselves on a platform where ultimately that satisfaction will always be lacking. For example, there was one quote. It was a quote, and it said that happened to be directed towards men, but there seems to be a majority of. Anyways, it happens to be directed towards men, this particular quote, but you could understand the principle. So the quote was that if you give a man, means a materialistic man, if you give a materialistic man all the wealth in the world, all the food in the world, and all of the, what else? Yeah, that's the thing. Wealth. Oh yeah. Wealth. Give man all the wealth in the world, all the food in the world, and all the women in the world. Still, they won't be satisfied. Because on the material platform, that's that pinnacle of satisfaction, or that pinnacle of full satisfaction, it just can't be met. So this is indicating that we all have a spiritual nature that has to be gratified. Everyone is well aware of their senses and the need for gratification of the senses, right? The tongue wants to go out to all types of nice restaurants and taste all different types of nice food, and the ears want to hear very melodious music, and in many ways this is natural. Just have to be a little careful with it, which we'll get into later, which won't be too later because we're going to end soon, but means that the class is going to end soon. We're not going to. So what was I saying? Huh? Oh yeah, the ears want to hear, the tongue wants to taste, all right. So we're all aware. We are all well aware of that. And some spiritualists may argue we may be a little too well aware of that, because there's a point where the senses hijack the intelligence. And in other words, instead of inquiring into the absolute truth or becoming spiritually realized, we're just spending all of our time with the gratification of the senses. So, but there's a need for gratification of the spiritual desires, what our spiritual nature, what we are actually wanting, the soul. Means the soul has desires. And just to focus on the material needs of the body and mind will never satisfy the soul. And therefore, Jesus Christ, everybody knows him, right? He said that people, they can't just live on bread alone. And that's what people try to do. They just try to live on food alone, but that's not good enough, clearly. So therefore we need spiritual gratification on a regular basis, on a daily basis. And that spiritual gratification could be obtained in many ways. And one of the most important ways to get that spiritual gratification is to chant this mantra, which is on this sign here. 3 words, very easy. It's free. Some people charge for mantras, but we don't charge. You could take it with you for free. It's online also for free. So many nice, beautiful kirtans. So this mantra, accompanied with hearing some spiritual talks, accompanied with reading some spiritual books, accompanied with some spiritual association. These 4 things, the mantra, some spiritual association, some spiritual books, and what else? Some discussions. These will actually gratify the soul. This will bring nourishment. So this is what this particular quote is saying, and we're going to wrap it up here. This is what this particular quote is saying, that one's life's desires should not just be, or should not be, just aimed at the material gratification of the body and mind. But there's a whole nother world, and that's a spiritual dimension, which there is spiritual gratification. And that should be the main goal or aim, that spiritual realization of the absolute truth. And what is that absolute truth? That's the next quote, which we're not going to read tonight. But we could read, but I could tell you next time what that absolute truth is. There's 3 aspects. So does anybody have any questions? That wasn't too long. That was just 15 minutes.
I have a question.
Yes, sir. Octavio.
The times when I've had transcendental experiences were when I was feeling emotionally intense. My senses were very alive.
All right. So that was your comment. Or is that a question? Or a reflection? A comment, okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, sometimes people say, I feel really alive when my senses are on fire and my I have all these urges and I just try to go gratify them and I feel really alive. There is something in it, obviously, or else why would people be spending their whole life doing those things? But this aliveness that one feels, it's just a pale reflection, or it's a shadow of the real enlivenment of the soul, or a spiritual enlivenment. Like someone say, I feel really alive when I go to the bar and drink as much alcohol as possible, humanly possible. They take one of those, what do you call those? No, it's not a straw, it's, yeah, beer bong? Yeah. Anyways, now, someone may feel enlivenment, and they do, or else why would they do it? There's something there, obviously. But just fast forward the movie, right? They're stumbling out of the bar, and they're staggering, and they can't walk straight. Someone was telling me the other day that I didn't know this happened, actually. It's the first time I've heard, but someone was telling me the other day, right here in the beautiful Pacific Beach, they're at a bar, and having a good time, feeling enlivened, and then they're staggered out of the bar. I didn't know this, but police patrol, and apparently if someone's really drunk, because it can actually be very dangerous. I mean, if they fall, they could hit their head, and there could be big problems. Or they could fall and they could the vomit and not breathing properly and issues, right? So many issues could happen. To get hit by a car. I mean, so apparently police patrol Pacific Beach in the late hours, 1, 2 in the morning. And if someone's really drunk, they say, "You're coming with me," the police. And they actually grab them, throw them in a van, and they drive them down to by the airport, and there's a facility, kind of like a Krishna lounge. Not exactly like a Krishna lounge, but a room, and they have all these mats, and they just put the person on the mat there, and they just let them sleep there all night. And the next morning they say, okay, sign this paper, and the person's out, and they have to figure out how to get where they're going. So yeah, they felt some enlivenment, but then fast forward, and you could, and then so anyways, it's an example, and much of the gratification is like that. It's very pleasant in the beginning, but then later it turns into something else. So the difference between spiritual happiness and that type of happiness is that it may be a little difficult in the beginning because the mind is wanting to fight it and do its natural thing, means go for the material. But over time it becomes very, very pleasant, and there's no, side effects, ill side effects. So now that may have not been completely in relation anyway, so I just wanted to say that. Yeah. Does anybody have any other? Yes.
Well, I just thought it was funny, that example that you give, and we give many examples about PV because it's relevant to us. But yeah, we are living just a block away from the bars, right? I just want to make a comment on what you said about how you mentioned you experience intense emotion when you experience transcendence. And I just thought that perhaps we are more or less regaining Krishna consciousness or in this process of yoga, Bhakti, but Krishna, sometimes when we're sincerely praying, sincerely chanting, sincerely connecting through the mantra, he'll give these glimpses of transcendental ecstasy, this Ananda, this original state of consciousness that we all possess innately within us. And I think it's beautiful that from that taste, Krishna is kind of showing that this is what we can experience always if we have that connection through the chant. So
yeah, thank you. Yeah, you get glimpses of higher stages of consciousness, like when chanting, for example, you could get a glimpse of higher states of consciousness. Generally, that happens when we're, yeah, generally that happens when I mean, much of spiritual life actually is learning how to treat people, because people are souls, and we're all connected and all that. So in other words, we're in the right mindset, you could say. So if we're in a very good mindset in terms of being in harmony with reality, then when we chant, we'll get these higher glimpses of higher stages. Whereas if maybe, anyway, so that's something. Yes.
I had a miracle happen to me that I wanted to thank everyone here. Last Thursday, everyone prayed and sang the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and for my brother. And I haven't spoken to my brother in many, like I would call him, he wouldn't pick up the phone. And this past week, after everyone sang for me and I received blessings here, and you talk about harmony, I've been talking to my brother. My brother's been calling me. We were talking about this last week, and this is the harmony, like the singing, the elevation, and I'm like on that path, and I had to share it with all of you because it's so amazing. So amazing. I can pick up the phone and we talk like normal people.
Nice.
So thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
nice comment. Nice. Thank you for sharing that.
In the other, yes.
I mean, you listed all the things that enlighten us, but I don't think you mentioned seva, or maybe I did. So I think seva is a big deal.
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
I said you listed, chanting,
Oh,
reading
yes,
the books,
yes.
all the things that we do.
Yeah.
But maybe I didn't hear. I don't know if you mentioned seva.
No, I didn't.
And so I think seva is a huge thing.
Yes, that's true.
So I mean, I'm saying that
That's
maybe
true.
just
Yes, seva means service. For those of you, it means service. And service could be service means to engage our energy in a particular way. So, for example, they're cooking here for the Krishna Lounge. So a part of seva or service is to help with that, to cut vegetables, things like that. And there's many things like that. I don't know, sweeping the leaves on the patio, or I remember years ago when I was first coming to the temple, this temple, and I was 17 years old, and I was coming here, and I remember I was doing community service, not here. I should have done it here actually, but I was doing community service at a like an auto mechanic place. What do you, a tire shop, something like that. And they were having me clean, the sweep and mop the place and clean up, and I was just feeling very, to be honest, miserable there. I was very unhappy, and I don't know what I was doing community service for. I forgot, to tell you the truth. I forgot what bad thing I did. You remember? I don't think it was a high school requirement. Maybe it was. Yeah, maybe it was. Anyways, I really forgot. So, but then I would come here to the temple, and I remember somebody asked me to clean the audio room here. In the temple with all the, what do you call that? Cables and all that stuff. So it was real a mess. And then I was cleaning that, and I was feeling very happy. So it was like night and day. And people could experiment with that. I mean, they could try it. There's plenty of things to help with. It's a whole temple operation, Krishna Lounge operation. So it does bring a lot of happiness. And they say that this, even washing pots, for example, they said that this washing of pots and all these different aspects, it's like removing layers from the consciousness or from our heart, layers of dust in which our true identity emerges from that. So spiritual identity, which is full of knowledge and full of bliss and eternal. So yeah, seva is important as well. So she's speaking from realization. She washes pots on Sunday nights. So I think she's trying. Yeah, I know you do. That's why you're. That's why you're bringing it up, right? Because you like it. You wanted to share it. Is there any last question or?
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Thank you, Balarama, for Nice round of applause for Balarama.